What's up, everybody? This is A7X fan Ben. Welcome back to the Pirates CSG podcast. This is the next part of the interview with the amazing game designer Mike Mulvihill, and you can find all the resources and whatnot that we talked about in the description below. And please consider also checking out the eBay affiliate link in the description to help support my content and everything I do to try to keep this game alive. Thanks for listening, and let's get to the episode. Do you know what printing process was used to apply the artwork to the cards?
I have no idea.
Yeah, no worries. Awesome.
Um, I know what we used to do was, did we do it on 4 sheets of color?
I think it was four color printing, yeah. CMYK.
It was 4 color printing, but I can't remember if we needed to provide that or if it was provided at our factory.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it changed over. I mean, back in the, like nowadays we just send them PDFs, so it's
Yep.
not even it's not even, or actually we send them InDesign files, I think. Or maybe no, it's got to be PDFs. So we send them either PDFs for them to pull the 4 colors from, or the systems now do that. But I think here it may have been a 4-color process in which there were the 4-color sheets, but I don't think so because I don't remember seeing a lot of offset printing, like where one color was offset from the rest.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
we were way more concerned with making sure that the art and the mold lined up, or the die cut lined
Yep.
up.
Yeah.
So I
Nice.
would tend to I don't know. I would have sent, if that was the case, we would have sent them, like, we didn't send them film that was done by the time
Yeah.
we gotten this far. So we didn't send film. Um, we
Nice.
probably sent them yeah, I think it was, in this case, we probably sent PDFs and then they did that. I don't know what the system was.
Yep.
It's I know that, like, over time it could scratch off, or if they didn't treat it correctly, we might get some scratch off, but I couldn't tell you what that was.
Nice. Do you know if sales numbers were consistent across the sets? I'm kind of curious if they went up after like Caribbean movies came out or anything like
I'm
that.
sorry, I missed the beginning. The what?
Yeah, do you know if sales numbers were consistent across the different expansions sets?
God, that's a question for your good friend Tiffany. The Pirates of the Caribbean was probably, only because of where it was distributed, a higher. Like when we got it into the stores, like into the mass market, like on the big red wall, the big Target red wall, as everybody knows, right by the checkout. It was never in the game aisle. Um, Maybe the board game was, and that may have been why we did a board game, was to try to get it into the game aisle at Target. I don't recall that. I would assume I would assume that, like, it was Pirates of the Caribbean, then the first / Unlimited set. We wouldn't have done a giant printing of the second set if that was, but I'm pretty sure it kept going up. It's why we kept doing them. If sales started to go down after multiple sets, I think we would have run into trouble, or sooner or earlier. And we never really ran into trouble. I mean, it ended only because Wizkids, as it was, closed. So I don't, the Wizkids 1.0, 2.0 versions, maybe 3.0, depending on how you divide it up.
No.
When that went and became part of NECA and all that stuff, and they stopped making the game, I think they just stopped making it. I don't think it had anything to do with sales.
Yeah.
But I could be very wrong on that towards the end, as I was, like I said before. I don't really. I was never told you're not doing another set, so
Yep. Nice.
take that for what it's worth, I
Yep.
guess.
Awesome. What was your involvement like with the Sony Online Entertainment digital version made
Oh,
by
that's
Direwolf
funny. I know
Digital?
that I saw that on there. So this is an interesting thing from a mic standpoint. I learned so much about the process from that in collaboration. Because I learned, like, the stuff we take for granted in a board game that actually has to be programmed in. And there's a lot of stuff that, like, I think there's some abilities that may have changed. There was some language that changed, and in the long run, I think the game played differently a little bit because they couldn't do the things we just took to be for granted that you do because we're sitting at a table talking to each other.
Yep.
They have to program that in a logic that a computer understands. And while we will allow for a whatever moment, you can't have a whatever moment in computers. So I had a friend of mine now, and has been for quite some time. A We had brought in as a consultant to work on some projects with us. His name is Chuck Nollenbach. Chuck Kallenbach. Chuck worked at, then ended up at Sony Online Entertainment, and he was the one that broached the subject of trying to get us to do that.
Hmm.
This is also a time when Wizkids was, I don't, may have been when we started working with Tops, and they wanted us to do all kinds of stuff. I don't, the timing there is really, my brain can't tell you what the timing is. I just don't recall it. But working with Chuck and that team was really, really cool. I learned that the language of programming and the power of the programming engineer, and their skill sets, and how mine were radically different. I had to learn to speak their language. They had to learn to listen to me. So yes, I did work with them. We got it to where it was. I don't necessarily know it was like the single greatest video game in history of time. I don't even remember if it was a, my understanding of it early on was that it was not as good as a one-to-one as maybe a simulator that we would, that would come out if we were doing it now, for instance. But yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool time. It was a massive, massive learning curve for me. I mean, it allowed me to move from WizKids into app-based games and things like that because of the knowledge I learned from a design standpoint about what an engineer, what the programmer can and can't tell a computer to do at any given point. What they can program. And again, nowadays we have AI, but back then we didn't. And so it had to explain exactly what the mechanics were. Um, and then if a mechanic didn't work, I would have to literally sit down and try to basically do this, do that, do this other thing, kind of thing. And if the mechanic didn't work, we were not going to change the main game for this game. So, like, I think if I'm not mistaken, like, there's a lot of ships not in the game, you
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
because we just could not get the mechanic to do what the ship was, and I was not going to do a whole set of. They were like, "Oh, we'll do a whole set of new mechanics," and I'm like, "Don't do that. That's kind of not our game then."
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
the way, then you run into like, "Hey, we did X number of design work on it, so now it's our game," that kind of thing. And so we didn't want to get into any of that kind of weird shit, so we didn't. um this is all, yeah, and it was in our second office. I remember because that's where Chuck came down, and then he would fly down and show me builds and all that kind of stuff from Denver, um, where they were at, or
Yep.
at the time. I think they were in Denver.
That
They were not
sounds.
in. They
Yeah.
were
That.
not the LA team. It was a Colorado team, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
I'm pretty darn sure it was. Yep. Yep.
And so yeah, that was it was cool. I worked on it. I couldn't even tell you much about it. I don't even know how long it lasted, to be honest with you. Um,
Yeah. I think it.
again, it was like, how do we, every game company wants to extend its property into every kind of thing, and that was one of them. So
Yep.
uh,
Nice.
it was cool. It was cool for me. I made a cool friend, and I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Oh man, so much.
Nice. Did you ever play past like the play testing or beta version, like with anyone in the broader Pirates community?
We not, not so much with the public internally. We obviously did, probably with the same people who did, all our intern stuff. So it would have been Kelly and me. I played with and against the guys from the Sony Online team. I don't necessarily know that after the game came out, I did a lot of playing with stuff with other people. I mean, the weird thing is Sony Online Entertainment. What I like. I think they were also having various issues. I can't even remember how long SOE lasted before it was, scooped up into something else. And then, again, they're in the business. It's a crazy thing. As much as we're all fans and we all love stuff, if they're not making money, then they're not caring. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, and they were now, treasury to the main line and the other stuff we were doing in the main line. So I can't even tell you how long that was a product for.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think it went out in like January 2011, I think, but it was from hearing I remember interviewing or being on the podcast with some players that played a lot, and I think there weren't many players past like 2008. But I don't they didn't take it offline until early 2011, I believe. So, yep. All right, I got a couple follow-ups from my friend Billy down in Los Angeles
yeah.
that you met, and he's wondering if you, and I'm thinking probably James Ernest especially, if you guys realize that the victory conditions and rules decisions from the first set would lead to the meta of using ships that are as fast as possible while also being as cheap as possible to fit into the 30 or 40 point framework.
Uh, yeah, it's the yes. So the answer to your question is yes. Obviously, we removed an entire faction because they were breaking the overall meta.
Yeah.
The the You gotta understand too that when the first sets came out and the game, the fixation on the game was, as I've said before, it was like, a playable game out of a pack for 375 or whatever it was, 475. And the whole point of that, the follow-up point of that was sit down and play it in like, 20 minutes over lunch if you're two kids in school. Um, that mindset was over me the very early in the game, which is reason why it was 30 points. It was 2 to 3 ships maybe plus crew. It was the reason why we um we stayed in that frame for so long was because that was the mandate overall was single pack play game, fast, fun, lunchtime game. Wasn't until by the time I don't know, maybe set 2 or 3, about whenever we started to like get the feedback, we started to see that the the design was geared towards that, and maybe that's not where the game needs to grow to.
Mhm.
So in the big picture, if we really wanted, we could have changed the rules around. The thing that was interesting to us was that's not, again, this is what Billy's asking is the meta on that was not an early meta, which is very strange. It's a meta that came out of power gaming, obviously. But when somebody's like, wait a second, if this is the victory condition, I'm only going to do this, and it's like, oh, yeah, I guess you can. Um, and so, part of it was, do we mind that play? Because then it's a 15-minute game, 20-minute game, and that fits our priority of play it over lunch. And so, looking back on it, that's probably not the best decision for the, holistic entity that the game ended up becoming and at the level that you want to play at, where you're like, I want a 100-point game, I want a 200, I want a 5,000-point game, I want a hour-long game. I don't want somebody coming in and winning in 15 minutes. Um, and so, yeah, we probably over time would have rethought that. I mean, as I said, the whole original point of this game was we did not want it to be bogged down in like a wooden ships Iron Man slog fight of positioning and and ships getting broadside to each other so that we can fight. We wanted something that involved pirates, treasure, all that kind of stuff. And so the default setting was always like collect the treasure to win. So, yes, we knew it. We never thought it was as bad as it could be done in a statement like Billy made. But 10 sets in, you're like, oh my God, we maybe need to have rethought some of this, to change some of it. I like the idea that you had where you got to collect all the treasure, not just, 50 plus one or whatever the
Yeah.
original rule was.
Yep.
Um, so that was that, that change that, that should have probably been enacted in the games in the later stage. It never was, but it probably something like that could and should have been added in. It's also, we found out a little bit later for the guys who did min max that they never used treasure, like special treasure, unique treasure, because it had no value, no dollar value, or no victory condition value in their minds. They gave them powers, it gave them other stuff, but if they were going to win, they wanted to collect only, only coins and only at the highest value that they could. So yes, there are people out there who min max that, just like any other min maxing. There's people out there who power game that, but it never rose to the point of contention. The biggest thing, just in case it comes up, the biggest point of contention were the people who were taking like super hardcore advantage of the fact that we have that kind of like, hey, no island can be near each other. We never said how far away they can be from each other. So you would have people setting up like, we would get constant letters of like, my brother or my friend sets it up like 5 feet away, and it takes, half hour to, for me to get to the game. And by that time he collected all the treasure. We
Hmm.
had, that was an actual bigger issue than people only getting fast ships with large cargo spaces and winning the game.
Interesting.
And
That
and
got
the
fixed
bottom
pretty
line
early
was,
on.
we said, the bottom line in that case is don't play with that guy. He's a jerk. You know, he'd say, no, 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 bring it closer. Let's play it normal, but that's another thing that you have to sometimes tell people, like, hey, the person you're playing with is kind of a jerk if they're doing, if they're taking a basic fun, let's play this on the dining room table mechanic and setting up an island, basketball court away. Yeah, maybe you tell them, I don't want to play with you anymore. You're not, you know, but no one ever, sometimes don't say that. That's actually become another phenomena of the more modern thing of people just going, I don't want to play games with you anymore. I don't
Yeah.
like the way you play games.
Yeah.
But,
That's fair.
again, saying stuff up front gets that out of the way right away. Back in the day, we would get letters about people, photos. I remember we got Polaroids, old school, like the Polaroids from people of their,
What?
you know, their setup. And some guys got one island's like literally and they're all sitting at one end of the dining room table, and there's a island all the way at the other end. And they're like, is this fair? I'm
Oh
like,
my
first off,
god.
how long ago was this game that you're sending a photo in? And
Yeah.
secondly, to tell them no. You can tell them no. It's, you're playing a game. If
Yeah.
it doesn't work, so
Huh. Yeah, that must have been fixed pretty early on because the rules call for either like 2L to 4L distance between islands, or it got changed later to 3L to 6L. So yeah, that must have been some kind of early
but
playtesting
yeah, that
nightmare.
was the one. Yeah, but as for the, yeah, sure, in the metagame, yes, if you get a lot of quick boats and you set yourself up correctly, you could win without encountering anybody. And that, again, that's a thing that you go, okay, we did that one time. This is the other cool thing about pirates is people will do that. They'll like play it that way one time, and they'll go, okay, I did it that one time. Yeah, all right, that's boring. Let's play a cool game of
Yeah.
pirates. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yes, in the big picture, meta should have probably evolved over time, and it did a little bit, but probably not enough to fix that wholly.
Yeah. That's a great point. Another pro in terms of collectability is with over 1,000 ships to play with and like hundreds of crew, you don't have to get stuck playing the same fleet or strategy. You can change it up every game for your entire life and never do the same thing twice. So that's a really cool part about it. I think that answers the next question about like realizing how important a ship's speed would be. Seems pretty clear that was the case. So we'll move to the next one. This one we did touch on a tiny bit earlier. Do you know what went into the process of balancing out 10-masted ships like the Zeus?
Uh, I gotta tell you, I can't even tell you now if that's an actual balance ship. So I don't. That was.
Yeah, that one.
I don't know. I'm just gonna tell you frankly. I don't know how balanced it is. it was one of those, like I said early on, it was one of those that we knew stretched the boundaries of our matrix. And the question is, if we, I believe when we played it, it was just like how effective is this ship and the games that we have are also a
Yeah.
philosophy. This is very funny and probably an incorrect philosophy to have, and people are going to be like, "What?" We actually didn't care about balance after what we said was a balanced game.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so if we said a game, an official game of Pirates of the Crimson Seas is a 40-point game, and you play an 80-point game, we're like, good. Let us know if it works,
Exactly. Yep. And
because
that's fair.
we
That's totally
couldn't
fair.
test every value. We couldn't test
Yeah.
that. So
It's
when we made
yep.
something that was outside the spectrum of the normal game, like
The 40
the Time
point.
Master Junk, we were like, yeah, you know what? We are confident that our game plays well. And we're
Exactly.
confident that if you play an 80-point game, you might find stuff that doesn't really work very well. But we're also confident that it'll be a riot to play, and it's really cool to see this giant ship on the board. And again, it's not about trying to defeat the ship; it's about collecting the treasure. So as long as we had that kind of always in the back of our heads that like we are pretty confident with our substructure and our foundation but we could never guarantee, like if you say you want to play a 5,000 point game, we couldn't guarantee that that would be interesting after a certain point. We think it is. If you ask me, I'll tell you I believe it is. I believe our foundation is solid enough to have that many ships out on the board and have it fun and interesting and unique and curious. Would you play it a second time? That I can't guarantee, because I can't guarantee that it won't just fall apart at some point on itself. But yeah, the answer to that question is probably not truly balanced, probably built on a solid foundation of balance, but I can't say that it's going to work in every scenario with every other combination of ships.
Yeah.
Now, if you asked me back then, I probably would have told you a very different answer, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That makes sense. Awesome. Do you remember any pushback from the gaming community or the WizKids Pirates forums for a specific set or faction or rule?
Basically, we talked about a lot of them. We got a lot of feedback that forts sucked early on,
Yeah.
so we never did forts again.
It's true.
We got some, and that was, I think, because again, the perception after the first set was this is a really cool tabletop pirate ship game, and now we have these static things that just fire on ships from a distance, and they didn't really feel like they felt like part of the overall story and milieu of pirates and the forts and the islands and all that kind of stuff, but somehow they didn't really fit the game. I already told you about that one ship or that ship
Yeah,
mechanic
the
that
ship stealing
people
ability.
went crazy about. Um, the we didn't really get a lot of pushback. I mean, always with fans. Now you look back and you can see the interweaving and the long term story and the stuff that we did and how we did it. But back then, like everything that would come out, and it would be a new set of ships types and a new set and a new faction type, a new flag, if you will. There would always be a little bit of pushback on that of how you do the Norse and then we don't do the Norse again, in the next set, and that becomes somebody's favorite faction and wants to know why we're not supporting it. That kind of stuff. That's normal. We didn't really, again, there was not the collectible marketplace that there is now, the speculator market, so we didn't have to deal with a lot of pushback on that front. um, we got it in stores, so everybody always had it, so there was not like a lot of that customer service, my store stopped carrying it, or why doesn't my store have it. It was not a mass market product in that regard. I think we may have gotten some confusion slash pushback on like the box sets,
Hmm.
because they, in a lot of cases, they were ships that we always included a blister pack in there, so people wanted to know if the blister pack and the unique ship, or is it blah blah blah? Is it a regular blister pack? Just regular consumer questions, but no real like hardcore pushback on anything. I think I've said most of them in our discussion. The setting up a million miles away, that was a big one for some reason, which I can't quite figure out. But like I said, not a lot of hardcore pushback.
Yeah, awesome. Do you happen to know if Captain Teague from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, played by Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, was replaced by this other crew called Damsel in Distress due to like likeness or IP issues? I happened to find this in the spreadsheets that Wolf sent me, the official Wizkids spreadsheets, and I found some like unreleased stuff. And one of them was Captain Teague, who was really interesting. But then I saw that it essentially morphed into this other crew that reused the character of Rigetti, just in a different picture with the weird outfit on. So
Wow,
I know it's really
dude,
specific.
I can't tell, and I don't have my set here. I would look through my set, but my
Yeah.
set's at work. I took it into work because I wanted to show people early Disney licensing.
Nice.
Uh,
Yeah, I've included a picture in the chat, but it's not
yeah,
really.
I see it.
That's
I
only
see it there.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't know.
Yeah, that's all good. I know it's super
I
random
don't
question.
recall my.
I was almost curious if it
It
had
probably
anything.
would not have been a likeness issue. If
Okay.
anything, it was probably this may have been the period of time where like there were all kinds of rumors that he did some stuff and they didn't want it associated. I don't know. Disney's a strange.
Yeah.
When Disney doesn't want something, they really don't want something.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of stories I can tell that are about that, but I won't. But yeah, so to answer your bigger question, I don't have an answer to that. If it's not in the final set, it never got made.
Yeah,
And
no worries.
we may have done a Teague one, but
yeah, I was almost curious if it was like just a thought that had something to do with like his star power because he was like a rock and roll icon before Johnny Depp was even
no,
famous.
that wouldn't have been it. It would have been whether or not Disney found more likely. It would have been if Disney found something that they didn't like in some other way.
Yeah.
If you're in the movie, you're in the movie, and we could use it. Maybe there was maybe he had a special licensing agreement, or maybe there's a lot of times like the Robin Williams thing where like and they said that you can't advertise Robin Williams is in this movie, and they did anyway, and then Disney had all kinds of problems. But for years afterwards, you couldn't say it until they made up for the second movie, or third movie, I think it was. In our case, so it could be that Disney had an agreement that they weren't going to promote that he was in it, and therefore this was considered promotion. There's a million zillion reasons, and every one of those, anytime you're working IP, you are in somebody else's play. It's like going to somebody else's house as a little kid. They have all new rules every time.
Yeah.
And you just have to go, okay, I don't know what the new rules are. Can you tell me some of the new rules? So,
yep. Nice. Do you know
but I don't know. I can't answer that question because I actually don't remember.
Yeah, that's all good. Do you know how far
I personally, if you're asking me, I would have done a Teague card,
yeah,
but
he was in it. You probably put him there.
That Teague is not there tells me there was probably some pushback.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that makes sense. Do you know how far Jordan Wiseman got in trying to get a license to use the Pirates of the Caribbean intellectual property for the first set instead of doing Spanish Main? Because I know he was gunning for it from like 2003 or 4, but it didn't work out until later.
I don't know how far he got. I mean, here's the thing: there are people out there. There are property owners, IP owners out there who will pick up the phone and say yes to the first thing that calls. There are other ones that will say yes to everyone. They just say yes. They never say no. Major League Baseball, I did a baseball game. They will say yes to anything you want to do. It used to back in the day. You want to do a set of. I'm looking at my desk to see if there's something you want to do, like computer mice, but the top of it is the different teams of baseball. Yes, you got that license. No one's going to buy that. I mean, what the hell, But they would say yes. The NFL, on the other hand, would say no to everybody. They just were like, it was a blanket no, and then you had to prove to them why you were in this niche market that would sell for them. Disney was this thing, and the funniest thing about Disney is it's easier to get a contract to something when it's not popular, obviously, than it is when it's popular. Disney is a great poker in the fire company. They are like, man, this Frozen is hot. All you're going to see is Frozen. Cars is hot. All you're going to see is Cars. Now you don't see as much Cars. And so if we wanted the Cars license to do, let's say, a racing car game using styrene, like I did for NASCAR, it would probably be, oh yeah, no problem. Not oh no problem. You'd have to prove to them that you're a viable interest. So when Jordan went after Pirates of the Caribbean, it was hot. And now we're a small game company, small by standards. We're doing Marvel and DC. Marvel was not owned by Disney at the time. We're doing Marvel and we're doing DC. And we're doing some independent comics, and we're being only sold in hobby shops. And to Disney, that's not their market. Their market is mass market. Their market is everywhere that they can go. They were doing all this kind of stuff. They already had everybody kick lined up to sell Pirates of the Caribbean t-shirts and Pirates of the Caribbean stuff. They did a Game of Life version of Pirates of the Caribbean. Trust me, I own it. And so they were like super hyper aggressive. So going to them saying, hey, we have this idea for this game where you make these little model ships and you play a version of Pirates, they're going to be like, that's cute, thanks, but it's not going to really go far. Now, Jordan had a really good relationship with a lot of people at Disney, so it may have gone farther than what I'm making it sound like, but not until the game came out did we have something to show them. And when you have something to show a licensor, that's way huge than if you are just going in with this concept document or a white styrene and showing them how you would fit it together. We were never in a position to do pre-production prototypes, so we never had the ability to go in and make a fake fleet and do all that stuff. Not when he would have been showing it before the game came out. After the game comes out, now we have a game. We can go back to them. And by that time, they were on movie 2, and then all of a sudden, they're like a franchise, and they're huge. And now we have another set of things we have to climb to get into there. So bottom line is, no, I don't know how far he got, but I can say it wasn't very far because we didn't do it for 6 sets before he, and Jordan, the cool thing about Jordan is he'd knock on the door every day and say, we just did another set. We just added
Vikings. That makes
we
sense.
just did this other set, until they basically said, oh yeah, we don't have anything in this market, whatever. And, sure. And so, yeah, that was, I mean, it was the coolest, one of the greatest days of my life when we got that license and I got to work on a Disney property. But yeah, up until then, we had been trying for all kinds of Disney properties.
Nice.
So it was cool. But yeah, I don't know that it would ever launched with Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yep.
I think that's a bridge to licensing far, I think.
Yeah, just from scratch. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you still maintain a collection?
Me?
Yep.
Oh yeah, of what? Like I have all the cards, if that's
Awesome.
what you're asking, and as you well know, random other cards that I keep finding around my house.
Nice.
And then as pirates, yeah, I will buy anything that's pirate themed. I'm a huge pirate fan. Over before I started working on that game, and that just was like, hey, I get to research and do pirate stuff. This is awesome. So
Yeah.
I got to do that. But yeah, I have all the cards. I have them in sleeves and in binders. And then like I said, I just took my Pirates of the Caribbean binder to work to show somebody about licensing that back in the day.
Yeah. Nice. Do you have any prototypes or like special Pirates items, like unreleased stuff?
I probably do. I know. I thought I had it here. up here in my office, I have a white prototype ship that was like a styrene template ship. I
Nice.
used to have a set of all of them.
Wow.
I think even before I moved, I think that before I left WizKids, I think a lot of them started to break because they were not they were on whatever the company that would print them out would have as extra. You know, they're not going to print you a sheet of, you know, a giant sheet of plain ones. So we would get them in like as test. I think I talked about this last time as kind of test pieces. If I find them, dude, I'll send you photos
Yeah.
because I thought I had one or two up here. It was I think it was just a two-masted junk for a long time. I had it around. I used to
Nice.
keep it on my desk, but I don't see it anywhere. I'm looking real quick. Sorry if I'm sounding distracted, but I'm looking and I don't see it. It might be down in my basement. I have a desk down there that I use sometimes, and I had a bunch of stuff. But then I have the complete set of the little busts that I gave you some for from Pirates that we did as I think prizes at the first Gen Con tournament that we did. I have a couple of the boxes and some of the limited edition stuff. Um, but yeah, I think that's. I still have some packs that are not opened. I don't know if that counts as anything to anybody. But yeah,
Nice.
that's yeah, it's legacy stuff, dude. I love that. And then you know what's really funny is that like I had some sitting on my desk at work because like I said, I always bring a pack in and then show somebody who wants to see how to play games differently that game. And so I always have a handful of ships on my desk and some guy that came in and was like massively younger, probably younger than both of us, comes in. He's like, "Oh my god, is that pirate game?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, it's the greatest game. I found some packs somebody had given me. It's great." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I designed it." You know, I'm like,
Nice.
I don't know. Do I say that to people now? Is that weird? Yeah. But yeah, that was I just am astounded. I guess I should not have been. I've seen various games come and go over times, but the fact that there's this vibrant collection of people playing the game now is awesome.
Yeah. Nice. Do you okay, next one's kind of random fun question. If you haven't
Oh,
already seen the record, what do you think is the highest dollar amount that any ship from the game has publicly sold for? And which ship, if you know?
wow. I have not, so I don't know.
Nice.
And I'm gonna say because people are weird, I'm gonna go for like, you know, I don't know, like $250.
Okay, so there's one ship called the Obago Deuce that supposedly there's only between like 30 and 70 copies that exist, based on various estimates and whatnot. And one sold at one point for $1,825 and like 1 cent.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
What is the Abago Deuce from?
So it's from Fire and Steel, and
Okay.
it's a weird it's a weird one where it was like it didn't get a proper release. It was never going to be in packs anyway, I don't think, but um it's a really bizarre one. It's in
Yeah, I
the
never
master
would have
spreadsheet,
guessed
but
that. I never would have guessed over 1,000 or almost $2,000. That's so foreign to me. It's not even.
yeah. So it was I remember I want to say it was 2019 there was one that sold for $500, and then at one point I've got a picture of one selling for $1,225 in December 2020. And then one, I don't know if it's 2020 or 21, one sold for almost 2 grand. So yeah, pretty wild stuff.
Oh, yeah, and I also have the Santa ship too.
Oh yeah, the
I have
sleigh. Yeah, nice.
I have a
Nice.
couple of those, I guess, somewhere.
Yeah,
I
nice.
know we have one with our Christmas stuff. I think my wife has one in our curio cabinet. But yeah, I have that.
Yeah, nice.
No,
Do
I
you
don't have those. I wish I knew where they were.
Okay, yeah. So you don't know
Those
what
are the
happened to
big
the Gen
giant.
Con
He's showing me
ships.
the picture of the big giant ships that we had at Gen Con one
Yeah, the
year, and
stuff that you
I don't know. I
yeah.
don't know where they went.
Yeah,
I
Tiffany
do
thinks they were
remember
given away, but
people. Tiff says that she just thinks at the end of the show we just gave them to fans,
yeah.
and that could very well be because I don't recall them. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't remember seeing them back in the office. Usually after a convention, we'd have all the stuff sitting in the office,
Yeah.
and I don't recall seeing them, so I don't know where they went.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it was fun talking to Ethan about how he made them and stuff, but he wasn't sure either. So, next one. Do you know if WizKids has an archive of their old forums from 2004 to 2008? Um, I don't know if they would keep something like that if you heard about that at all.
I have no idea. Two,
Yep.
the words archive and WizKids are probably like oil and water. They don't really mix. I think Tiffany was saying about like and some other stuff that when the various versions of WizKids happened, we call them 1.0, 2.0. 1.0 was fully owned by Jordan. And then when Tops came in 2.0 and they closed down divisions of the company, our publication wing and a couple of other divisions, a lot of even at that point, a lot of those records were not they were not interested in them. So like I know my wife was the novel editor and head of publishing, and so there's a lot of stuff that just didn't exist anymore after a certain time. Then when we moved then when Tops bought us, then when we moved and we changed management teams, like a version 2.5, because we're still Tops and everything, we moved. There was a whole kind of, I don't want to say purge of old stuff, but there was just a lot of stuff that was lost. A lot of I would just say it wasn't. A lot of it just went to a warehouse someplace or a storage site someplace, and then I don't know where that ended up going. But I got to tell you, from an online perspective, I don't think. I mean, maybe no. I'm going to say they probably have no records
Yeah,
of that,
yeah,
but I don't know that. I mean, I'm speaking from Mike Mulvihill, who hasn't worked for them. I don't know when they went east to the East Coast and started kind of a 3.0 version of WizKids. I don't know what they maintained, especially electronically or with a um or from an online standpoint. I don't know even how we gave them our final files, and stuff like that. I know that the handful of people who stayed there till the very end, they were asking, giving final files. I had turned my files over to other people to work on. They were not my proprietary files; they were the company's files. So I didn't, if I have anything at this point now, it's on a floppy disk, which I wouldn't even know how to access, and then I have to go through them all. And God knows, it's probably nothing from the company. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. A tiny bit of his archive through the Wayback Machine, but not too much. So awesome. Other than this year, when was the last time you played? It's probably at work, I guess.
let's see. So not only did I play with you like a full, complete, real game, I played a small game last summer, not this summer before, at a family reunion. They pulled out some packs that they had found, my in-laws and some other people, and so I played then. And taught. See, that's the problem. The other problem with it being me is that then people want me to teach them the game,
Yeah,
and so it's more of a teaching game than a playing game. Same thing that happens at work. So, like I said, I have a bunch of pieces at work, and when we were talking about something, I brought some packs in and we played there, and that would have been maybe even the year before. So maybe right now, from playing a game, playing hardcore like we did the other night, where there's a winner and we're playing it, it's few and far between. Me playing pirates in a non-competitive, like winner take all, not a true full game with all the bells and whistles. I would say maybe twice a year I do that. So I'm familiar with it in that sense of, here's the thing I know how to play, and I make and I made, and it's fun, and you will have fun playing it too. Here's the full rules, read them. Um, is a lot, is more often than anything else. I
yeah,
mean, I still have to explain to people how it's a playable game out of a pack, because nowadays people just don't believe me. But I'm like, hey,
interesting. Yeah,
let me show you a pack. Here,
yep,
let's play.
yep.
All right, that concludes this part of the interview with the amazing Pirates game designer Mike Mulvihill. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, whether that's a comment on YouTube, follow-up questions in the thread at Pirates with Ben, or commentary on Discord or Facebook. Make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. There are links in the description for this episode where you can find some of the links and resources I used, and there's also an affiliate link to buy Pirate CSG items on eBay. Consider using that link as a way to support all my efforts to keep the game alive and hopefully even revive it as well. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.